My name is Jeremy SossI. I'm living in Bethlehem, Connecticut. No, I was born in Danbury, Connecticut, and I lived there till I was about 10, and I moved up to where I am now in Bethlehem in 1990, I think. So I was about 10 or 11 there, and I've been living there ever since. Good family. I mean, they've always been real good for me and good to me, and I've had a lot of support, with my family when it comes to playing pool. Like my mom is totally behind it, and my dad, my brother, and they watch me now online, and my little nephew now watches me. So I come from a good family. I started playing when I was 13 or 14, I think. It was on my birthday, in fact. Me and my brother were out driving around in a town called Torrington up where I live, and I didn't know anything about pool, and I wanted to play video games. I wanted to go to the bowling alley because I knew they had video games there, and we kind of drove by this pool room, and it was called Torrington Billiards, and my brother said, "Let's go in there," and I was like, "No, I don't want to go." My brother's about 9 years older than me, and I said, "I don't want to go in there," but we ended up going in, and we played, and we started going maybe once a week or twice a week, and we ended up becoming real good friends with the owner, George Texera, and I'm like best friends with him to this day. It was, that was a long time ago. It was 15, 16 years ago, something like that. But I played a lot from maybe say 14 to about 20 or 19, and then I quit. I quit from there until about 3 to 3.5 years ago, and then I started again, and I started playing more tournaments then. Up till then, I kind of just stayed local and gambled, and I never really entered a lot of the tournaments. But about 3.5 years ago, I started entering the bigger tournaments, and I did more in the last 3 years than I did my whole other time playing. I don't know why, but maybe it's because I'm more older now and mature in the mind. I started originally with 8 ball, but I quickly saw people playing 9 ball. I started playing 9 ball right away after that. Then I just started playing straight pool like the last. I got in the World Straight Pool Tournament, and I got a free entry, and I realized I had no clue what I was doing. So I've been practicing a lot of straight pool, and I did good in the amateur 8 ball down in Valley Forge. I came in second in that, and there was like 144 players. So I like 8 ball, but that was different on the bar tables. Same thing when I went there, it was like completely different than 9 ball on a big table. It was, my learning curve was pretty steep at that tournament. The first couple hours it was crazy, but I did good there, and that's about the only game I play pretty much. 9 ball and 10 ball and 8 ball. I don't really know when I played my first tournament. I probably played a lot of weekly tournaments, before my first. I remember one big tournament a while back when I was a kid that I was afraid to play on the front table there where all the people were, and this always stuck in my memory. I don't know if it was the first big tournament or not, but it was in Stamford, Connecticut, and I remember saying to a friend of mine, this guy Glenn Spector, I says, I hope they don't call me for the front table. It's like in school, you don't want the teacher to call on you, And he says, it doesn't matter. He says, whether you win or lose, no, it's not going to affect anybody's life. Within 20 minutes, they're going to forget all about it. So it kind of helped me, relieve the pressure. I don't think I ended up playing on the table, but that always stuck with me for some reason, But they will remember it though if you play great, more so if you play bad, you know. I tell you, there's a guy in Connecticut who is a good player, and when I first started, he was one of the top players in Connecticut, and he still is. And I always had a tough time playing him. His name's Tommy Seminaro, Tommy Jr. they call him, and he was always tough for me. I don't know why he was just he was very like intimidating, like to play. He had like a confidence about him, you know, and it was tough to play him when I was young, you know. Just anybody really that's had a big name was tough, you know, at first, because uh, you just don't, you tend, well, I tend not, I don't know about anybody else, but I tended not to play my game on them, you know, because you get more, you spend more time focusing on them, like what they're thinking of how you're playing, or people are watching you. You allow all these things to come into your psyche that's not, has nothing to do with the game, you know. And I'm still working on that today. I mean, I've gotten a lot better with it, you know, but you know, you really got to focus on the balls, you know. It's no different than playing at your house, or, you know, with nobody around and just practicing. It's the same thing, really. It's just, you know, your brain complicates everything, you know. Anything that comes in that's not you know, your normal routine is going to affect your performance, you know. So I was talking about this topic with a good friend of mine in Connecticut, and we were talking about pressure. And, you know, a lot of people say, you know, pressure affects you. It does affect, you know, pressure is always there. But if you really think about it, I think that pressure doesn't even, it's not even real. It doesn't exist. I mean, you can't touch it, you know. It's all created in the mind, you know. And I think it's like it's an illusionary thing, you know, that affects your game, you know, when it happens to you. Yeah, I mean, you know, when you're struggling like that, and you know, they call it, like in the pool world, they call it like you're in a coma. You know, everything is like, seems like you know, you have the easiest shot, and it seems like it's 10 miles away. You know, and I mean, it's, you know, it's a weird thing. I don't know. It happens to everybody, you know. I mean, but I think as you grow as a player, and you realize things about yourself, and it doesn't happen like, you know, like it used to for me, you know. I mean, I still get nervous, but I know how to contain it and focus harder, you know, which tends to relieve a lot of that and that type of thing. I won a lot of ones like locally in Connecticut on the it's now called the man, my buddy's gonna get mad at me because I can't remember the name of the tour. East Coast Pool Tour, that's what it is. I won a lot before it was called East Coast Pool Tour. A guy named Sal Bev runs it in Connecticut, and I won a lot of events on his tour. I mean, they were hard, you know. They're hard now. I mean, you know, because now especially I'm like the highest handicap, and you got to give up a lot of weight. But before too, I mean, I had to play a lot of guys that were good players, you know, like Chuck Altamar and Tommy Jr. and a lot of guys, you know. So it was always hard, you know. But the first big one I won was the Ocean State Championship there in Snookers in Rhode Island, Snookers Billiards. Yeah, I'm happy with the way everything's going, but I'd like to have more time to just work on my game and be able to go to more events. It's hard because you don't have the finances to go to all the major tournaments, and that's really the only way to get you know, real good. You know, I mean, you got to be competing day in, day out against the world's best players. I mean, otherwise, you can only get so good, I mean, but it's hard to get to go to those events because they cost so much to go to, but that's the only thing I think that I'm not happy about, is that I can't go to all the events, and it's just hard. And I asked Johnny Archer about how to get sponsored, and he said to just try to get expense sponsors, just to be able to go to all the events. But it seems like, especially where I live, there's no pool at all. I mean, it's really bad, I mean, you can't get any cheap action to stay in stroke, hardly. I mean, so there's no chance of getting sponsored there, But I'm hoping to win more tournaments and keep going and get more recognized, and hopefully something will pan out with that, maybe pick up a big sponsor. But I'd like to only play pool, but it's hard you need some kind of other income, especially now, I mean, now that I've won some big tournaments, more people know me. It's harder to make money gambling, and now in Connecticut too, that's the other thing. It's so bad in Connecticut. I mean, you can't make any money, That helps you when you grind out 100, 200 sometimes. It helps you keep going, and you can, go from event to event, But now I'm just going tournament to tournament pretty much. I'm not getting any action really, which is tough because you can't keep practicing is not the same as being under like battle conditions. It's just two different things. You can be hitting the ball great practicing, but it's always like in your home room or at your house or with nobody shooting back at you, so you really got to be in competition, a lot. Yeah, it's funny because I was telling you about the tournament, that Predator tournament that I won. I was telling you on Saturday, I think before the tournament, how I tend to play my best pool on the top players, and I've done real good in big tournaments. I came in like 10th or 11th in Derby City this year in the 9-ball, and I won the Ocean State Championship. I beat a lot of good players there. I beat Dennis Hatch, Joe Tucker, Ginky, Tony Robles twice in the finals, Joey Testa, and the other one there where I came in second to Archer, Turning Stone, and I beat a lot of killer players there too. But I tend to get more amped up to play them too. Like I want to do good more. Like I really try 110%. And sometimes I go to these, not that they're easier tournaments, but they're like so-called smaller tournaments. And I tend to take the players lighter, like a lot of the A's and stuff like that, and you end up losing a lot of matches because you don't try as hard, So I got sick of losing matches like that. I mean, you're always going to lose matches, but I lost a lot of matches where I never, and I'm sometimes I'm struggling with guys that I shouldn't be, and it's just because I don't go into that set with that mindset to kill, I want to shut them out, those big players, and the last tournament I went in there with that mindset, to I didn't want to let anybody see a ball, because you kind of take for granted little things too, like safeties, and you're just not trying hard. It's like a domino effect. If you don't try your hardest on a little safety, now the cue ball, your opponent can see the ball, they end up making it and running out. Versus if you jam them up, they can't see it, they might kick, you get ball in hand, you win the rack. It's all those little things add up to, you know, winning sets and winning tournaments. And I think that's one of the things I've learned over the last year or two, you know, that, you know, you have to play your hardest pool. You know, you gotta, every match has to be like you're playing Mika, or you know, that's the only way to win those tournaments, I think. You know, especially the way the format is. The format's conducive to the weaker players can win, you know, in the Predator Tour and the Blaze, stuff like that. It varies. I practice. There's days I practice 5, 6, 7, 8 hours. There's days I practice 2. There's days I practice none. And that's one of the things where I'm hoping to pick up a sponsor so I can do it full time, because that's another thing. You know, a lot of times I go to these tournaments and I'm not prepared. You know, I haven't been playing. Just haven't been playing enough, period. You know, there's other guys who go and they've been in action all week gambling, and I'm not even practicing enough. You know, and it's hard to do that with working and your family life, and you know, I have a girlfriend, and it's hard to do all those things. I mean, if I didn't have to work, that would be a huge factor. There would be no excuse. Not that there should be an excuse, period, but it's hard, you know. I mean, but I definitely need to. You know, that's another thing too, is practicing. You know, it keeps you sharp to go to the events. You know, you feel like you're playing good. You know, but at this point in my career, or whatever you would want to call it, I need more than practice. You know, I've been practicing for years. You know, and you need to be in the heat, you know, in the fire. I think, you know, that's what it makes you strong, and you learn from, you know. Well, if I wasn't gambling, which I think is the best practice, I started recently, which I think helped me, playing a lot of straight pool, and I've been trying to, each time I go to the table, I've been trying to break my high run, so I have something. Yeah, you have to have goals to work on when you practice. You know, and you tend to, I tend to get stagnant. Like if I keep doing the same thing, you kind of get like, you just, your heart's not in it after a while. You know, you're kind of going through the motions, but it's, you know, when I started playing straight pool, practicing it about 2 weeks ago, I felt like rejuvenated again. Like there's something I'm working towards, and everything was new, and you know, it's stimulating. You know, you got to have some kind of stimulus. You know, and so I think I would be working on straight pool a lot, because it helps your cue ball. You know, your cue ball gets a lot tighter. And I played straight pool for a few days, and I went back to 9-ball, and 9-ball looked like you're playing 3-ball. I mean, your cue ball doesn't have to be anywhere near as precise a lot of the time, you know, because your cue ball can be in a general area, and it can, you know, it can be over here. It doesn't matter, you know. I mean, a lot of times you got to get on the right side of the ball, but there's the area is a lot greater for 9-ball. Straight pool, it's got to be everything pinpoint, and you got to, you know, have knowledge of going into the balls to break them up. You got to figure out how the balls react. So that'd be, you know, my practice routine. That'd be something that I think I'm always going to keep in my game from now on, in my practice. You got to work on your weaknesses too. You know, like kicking, or that's one of my weaknesses, kicking. Things like that. You can't work on your strengths. I mean, just throwing the balls out and shooting any ball isn't going to help you, you know, because most people are pretty good at that. You know, I mean, most A, B, those types of players they all pocket balls good, but the difference between them guys and the killers is you know, the cue ball, really. You know, maneuvering the cue ball, figuring out the right patterns. That type of thing, you know. Yeah, Genki. um, I think he's a top player. I think he's always been a top player. I think a lot of the new guys don't really realize how good he can play and how good he used to play. And now he's playing better. And they're starting to see it more. But as ever since I was a little kid, he was the guy. Especially in the area in the Northeast, he was the guy. Uh, you know, when you went to a tournament, that's the guy you got to beat. And he was winning and pretty much dominating all the tournaments there were in the Northeast. When I was in like the mid '90s, and I actually met him in my friend George Texera's pool room, and they had an All About Pool magazine then when he was in it, and I asked him for his autograph. I was the first person to ever ask him for his autograph. So, but I always looked up to him as a player. I always thought he played. I like his patterns. I think his cue ball is unbelievable. He's always close to balls. He's very smart. And mentally, I think he's one of the strongest players. Ever. I think. And he never, he'll hit. Sometimes he loses matches, and he never has anything bad to say about his opponent. He never says like, that guy can't play, or he just, I thought that was always something I looked up to in his game too. He was like classy about it, win or lose, and he doesn't make excuses, which is good, and I think he's a top player. Yeah, I got a good relationship with Genki, Dennis Hatch. That's about it. I know a lot of players. I'm friendly with a lot of players, but on a personal level, I would say, Santos too. Santos Sambon. As far as top players, I would say those are the three. I'm probably the closest with. I'm starting to get to know Thorsten Holman. We've talked a little bit, and I love his game too, and especially his straight pull game. I think it's unbelievable. I've been talking to him a lot about that, and I think he's a classy guy too. Yeah, one of my big helps has been Genki. Whenever there's a situation where I'm nervous, or I text him a lot before big matches saying I need a pep talk, and he always inspires me to play my best. He fills me with confidence. I think that's something I'm a little lacking in, is like self-belief, with my game. And he always tells me I'm a champion, and things like that, and I know he means it. He's not just saying it. And I think lately I've been really realizing that I can play with anybody. As long as my mind is there, and I'm hungry to play, and win. I think I can play with anybody. I know there's a lot I got to learn too, and I have weaknesses like everyone else, but I realized a lot over the last couple years that these guys aren't so ahead of a lot of guys. Like A players, they're not so as far away as people think. I think it's just a matter of they play their game a lot more consistently. I think that's a problem with the A players. That those types of level guys, they're not consistent with it. The top players are super consistent. Especially guys like Ralph Suke and those types of guys. They play like an even game. They never hardly play bad. But Genki's always helping me, and Tony Robles. You know, I tend to kind of take comments from people that I'll either hear through the grapevine that they've said about my game, or they say to me personally, and I kind of rely on that sometimes. You know, if I'm doubting myself. You know, like Tony Robles told me after I won the Ocean State Championship there, where I beat him in the finals, that he told me and a lot of other people that was the best pool he's ever seen in his life. So, you know, that made me feel good, you know, because I know that I'm capable of that, you know, and hopefully I'll do a lot more of that. No, not really. I mean, I don't know. I mean, lessons, I think they're overrated a little. I mean, they can help you, you know, but I think a lot of pool is just monkey see, monkey do. You really gotta be exposed to top level players and see how they do it, you know. I mean, any level, as long as they're above you, when you watch them, what they do, you know, you learn from it, you know, and then you kind of incorporate it in your game somehow. You know, you make mistakes and you know, you learn by trial and error, you know. But as far as lessons, I don't know, it can help you, but I think a lot of it is just doing it yourself. You know, you got to watch and then actualize it, you know, in your game somehow. I've had a lot of those. You know, to single out one time is difficult, because I've had a lot of games where tournament sets or gambling sets where I played way under how I'm supposed to play, you know, and it kind of haunts you. I mean, there's times where I've cried, you know, when I was younger after matches, and not too many, but I have. You know, I mean, there's none that particularly stick out, but I think you kind of push those in the back of your mind, you know, and kind of forget about them and go on. But you're going to have them no matter who you are, I think, you know. I've seen a lot of guys play bad, you know. I mean, it's just part of the game, I think, you know. I'm 30 now. I look a lot, yeah. Everybody thinks I'm like 18. Yeah. Mike Zuglin embarrassed me pretty bad up when I was in the finals with Archer up at Turning Stone. I think he was in the impression I was like 18, 19, you know. And he does like a little thing where he introduces you before before the match, and everybody's watching, all the stands are filled, and he says to me, he's introducing me, and he says, you know, what can we say about this kid? He's just a kid. He says, how old are you, Jeremy? And he puts the mic to my mouth. I was 28 at the time, and I says 28, and he couldn't believe it. You know, he says 28, and he says scratch that, folks. He says he's not just a kid. So that was kind of embarrassing, but you know, everybody always thinks I'm a lot younger. I flew to Reno about maybe 6 months ago for a bar table tournament. That was about the farthest tournament I went to. I've gone a lot of tournaments, like, you know, Virginia, Kentucky, a lot of local ones, like in the tri-state area. Yeah, I like traveling. You see different things, you know. It gets tiring though. I noticed that, you know, you kind of, you know, you go to a big tournament and you see the top players there. And I realized that how tiring it is, you know, day in and day out, to be constantly traveling, and then to play all these, you know, you go to one of these tournaments, even a Predator tournament or Joss tournament, you play all weekend. When you get done, I mean, it's getting better for me now because it's not as stressful to me now, and I started exercising a lot more, really working on like getting cardio shape better, you know, because it's not like going to work. I mean, you could spend 10 hours at the tournament playing matches, and it's very demanding emotionally and mentally, because you have to focus so hard, and there's a lot of ups and downs in the matches, and I tend to get like totally exhausted, you know, after a tournament like that. And it's not like going to work, because it's not as just taxing on you mentally, you know, and emotionally. You kind of, you know, you do what you got to do and you leave, and you're used to the routine there, you know, day in and day out at a job, and it's not the same, you know. It's, you got to give credit to the top players that do this, you know, week in, week out, because it's hard, you know. You really got to be in good shape to do it too. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of used to it now, but you kind of just gotta forget about everything that's going on, whatever your situation is with money. You gotta try to block it out, whatever's going on in your personal life or whatever, because all those things are only gonna affect you negatively. You know, I mean, um, you just gotta kind of find a way to focus. You know, I mean, that's what the game's all about, you know, is you take your concentration off a ball for a second, and you're gonna miss it, you know, a lot. I think a lot of the times, you know, so you really got to find a way to focus, you know, no matter what's. I mean, you know, I have a guy that's putting me in tournaments in Connecticut, and you know, I always want to, you know, that's another thing I like sometimes, like. When he goes with me, or having that, because it not only do I want to do good for myself, I want to make him, you know, happy too and proud, you know. So I tend to try a little harder sometimes with that too. I'm a horrible teacher. I'm horrible. I don't know what to tell him, you know, like I know how to do things on the table, but I don't sometimes know how to express what I'm doing. You know, it's just all like pool is a complete feel game. You know, it's total feel. You know, you develop certain strokes and how to hit the ball in certain ways. It's you just, you know, you like cultivate it, you know, and it's a thing within inside of yourself. It comes from intuition, you know. And it's like throwing a baseball, I think. You know, you don't think about doing it. You just grab it and do it, you know. So the teaching aspect, I think a lot of people with teaching, or that want to be students too, are looking for, you know, instantaneous results. Like, I think a lot of people think they're going to take a lesson and they're going to be playing like Tony Robles in a week. You know, it doesn't happen like that. You know, it's a lot of time you have to put in to get that you know, that level. I've discovered a lot of things about myself from playing pool. You know, I was always very timid, you know, shy. Uh, you know, I guess you could say like a lack of self-worth with a lot of things. You know, maybe not self-worth, but like self-esteem, you know. And I think pool was a vehicle for me to come face to face with things inside of me, you know, with myself, that you can't really escape. If you want to keep playing pool, you know, on a high level in professional tournaments, you have to deal with certain things inside of yourself sometimes. You know, you have to face it, or you're gonna have to quit. You know, because like with pressure and anxiety, and not that I have anxiety, but I mean, things come up. You know, like, you know, you feel, you get nervous, and you have to find ways to conquer those things, or they're going to control you completely. And you know, it's a performing type game. You know, you have to perform, and I think that it correlates with anything that has to do with a performing type thing. You have to be able to conquer those things within inside of you that hinder your progress, or your, you know, otherwise you got to quit. I think, it's one of the things that led me to that tournament, to win that tournament at in Rhode Island up at Snookers, was this is something that triggered a lot of things that I thought about and still think about with pool today because of what happened up there to me. It was beyond winning the tournament. It was beyond playing good. It was like it was a self-discovery type process up there, because I'll tell you why. Because a lot of the matches I think that I play, even now, not so much now, but even now I still do it. I think you tend to try to control what happens, or no, better yet, you try not to lose. That's a better way of putting it, instead of trying to win. It's like the same thing when you shoot a ball. Sometimes you're trying not to miss instead of trying to make the ball, and I think those are two separate things. So, when you play matches, a lot of times you're trying not to lose, which affects how you play, I think, because you're coming from like a place of fear and worry and anxiety, trying not to lose, versus letting go and, focusing on what's going on now, the shot at hand, each shot, and a thing that happened to me up at Snookers was I won my first two matches. I had a real tough match with Joey Testa, my second match on Sunday for that tournament, and it was I had a big lead. He's coming back on me, and he's got a lot of guys who are with him are cheering every time he wins a rack. It was a lot of pressure for me to pull out the win. And once I did, my next match was Dennis Hatch. And I had lost to him two previous tournaments before that, where I played horrible because I was so intimidated by him, because he's a great player and he's big, he's a very intimidating type player. And I kind of thought to myself in my mind, I thought, well, I had a good tournament so far. I'm in the money, and I kind of accepted that I was going to lose to Dennis. And because of that, it freed myself, and I ended up playing my game on him. And I remember thinking I played real good on him. I remember thinking, as I'm running out when I'm on the hill, I remember thinking to myself, I'm actually going to beat this guy. I'm going to win this set. And that triggered that giving up, and that freed myself to play, my game and not try to control what happens, And I never went back to that mindset for the whole rest of the tournament. And I played, I don't think, I remember missing one ball in 5 sets. I might have missed more than one, but the only one I remember missing was a 9-ball on Joe Tucker. It was a hard shot, but I don't think I missed more than maybe 2 balls, in 5 races to 9 up there, and I got in kind of like it's almost like a Zen type thing, what happened up there, It was like a trance. It was almost like a dream, like I was watching myself doing what I was doing. It was strange, but I was an absolute dead stroke up there, and I got the same way up in Turning Stone too. I did the same thing. It's the same thing happened. That's something happens in the mind, When I on Sunday up at Turning Stone, I beat Ronnie Wiseman. Then I had to play Johnny Archer, and I kind of got to that same type of thing, where I was happy to be where I was, and I just let go of everything, and just played the game. And it's a strange experience, And it happened to me one time. It happened to me a lot of times gambling too. One time in particular, though, I'll never forget, is a Filipino player that I was friends with that was hanging out at the room that I was hanging out in Bristol. I was playing a guy, $500 sets, and he was betting on me. There was about 5-6 Filipino guys that were all there, top players, that were all betting on me. And I think he could tell I was struggling, and not playing good. And between shots, he told me, he said, don't try to win or lose, just let go, or something along those lines, like just play, like don't try to control what happens, And I got into that same mental state up there too, or at that pool room where I used to hang out in, It happened to me a bunch of times, like, you get to a point in a match where you just feel you're going to lose because there's no way to come back from where you are because you're playing so bad. I mean, you can't, and because of that, a lot of guys, I think, will, you snap out of it. You end up freeing yourself because you give up. It's like losing all hope, and it frees yourself. It's true. I think so. I mean, I think that, I think I'm already there. I mean, I'm not trying to brag about myself or anything because I'm not doing that. But I think I'm obviously I'm not at Mika's level, consistently. But I've played pool, I think, as good as anybody can play the game. I mean, but it's a matter of doing it consistently under various different circumstances, situations, and atmospheres and stuff like that. But I'm still learning and getting better, and I don't see, I kind of wish I didn't quit because I don't know what would have happened up till now. But especially since what's happened in the last 2-3 years with my game and what I've done, I know now that there's no reason why I can't be at that level. It's just a matter of time to get there, and certain things have to happen, I guess. But I know the difference, I think, before versus now is that I kind of know that I can go there now. Before it was kind of like an unreachable thing. Now that I've done it, there's all those guys are just like anybody else. They weren't born running out. They have to go through the processes like anybody else, I think. So I don't think there's anything that anybody can do on a pool table that I can't do. So I don't see why I can't do what they do. It's just a matter of doing it. Hopefully I'll pick up a sponsor someday, to help me. I know I can do it, It's a matter of people, I think, don't want to take a chance on you because you don't have a name like a Mika, But I think as time goes on, you start to win more tournaments and people want to get behind you, So I think that's kind of a place I'm at now where people know me, but they don't really, maybe they don't think I'll be at that level. I don't know. It's like, even the top players, it's hard for them to go to all the tournaments and stuff, I think. I think a lot of them have lost their sponsors, their big sponsors, to go to tournaments. I've heard through the grapevine, So, it's nobody really wants to lay out a big spread of cash to go to all these events if there's no return. People are in it to make money, too. Unless you have like a rich uncle or something that believes in you, that's gonna lay out the money, it's hard to do it, because people wanna, they want to make money. Nobody wants to lose money, so it's hard to. But I'm hoping that things change. I think I'm working hard. I've been running and mountain biking and stuff like that to get in shape because these tournaments are very physically demanding, and I've been practicing and trying my heart out in tournaments, so hopefully hopefully things will, you know, pan out pretty, more than they have already. Well, I remember my first cue. I'll never forget that. I bought it. I think I bought it. Yeah, I bought it at my friend George Texera's pool room there where I first started, and it was an Adams cue. And at the time, it was like, you know, it was like getting a brand new car when you're 16 or something, But now, looking back on it, the cue was just an average cue. But the cue I have now is a Paul Drexler custom cue. I use Predator shafts, Predator brake cue, Jim Murnat case. Yeah, that's about it. I like the Predator shafts. I think that's where it's at. After I won the tournament at Snookers, Ginky, was there watching the whole time and with his girlfriend, and he came up to me after as soon as I, shot the last 9-ball in, he came up to me and hugged me and said, "I'm proud of you, kid." And that meant like almost, it meant just as much as winning the tournament to me, because I knew that now, I had his respect, as a player, and with Tony and a lot of people, but it's like almost like a coming out party. Like they knew now that I can play at that level, But when Ginky told me that growing up, idolizing him as a player, he was like a celebrity. He was a giant in the Northeast to everybody. I mean, there was no bigger name than Ginky. So that meant a lot to me that he told me that. I mean, a lot of people say I play slow, and they say, what's the word for it? Deliberate, maybe, but yeah, I don't always play like that. I have a lot of different speeds I can play. It depends on how I'm feeling at that time. When I get into dead gear, I mean, I start playing like as fast as Hatch almost, But, I don't think for me, I can't always get to that. I noticed that about his game, that he's the same tempo all the time, whether he's playing good or bad. I can't really do that. Like, I mean, I can force myself to do it. I just don't feel like it's right for me to play that speed if I'm not playing, with 100% confidence, and I think it helps too. You don't take anything for granted, when you play a little deliberate and slow. I mean, I like to think about what's going on the table, the layouts. I think that there's a lot of killer players in the game and in the past that have been that type of style, like Buddy Hall, Nick Barner, a lot of the old timers, and Siegel. And even now, Yang and Orcolo are considered the two top players in the world now, and I don't think either one of them are fast by any means, and not that, I mean, it's not that that's bad to play fast, but it's just styles. But I think you're more liable to make mistakes playing quickly, as far as when you think about the layouts, you're more liable to get into trouble, I think, and I think that's one of my strong points in my game is playing smart. I really think that's a big strong point in my game, but I hope anyway, and I think that to myself, I think that I proved that when I came in second at the amateur 8-ball, because every rack is like a nightmare. It's like the traffic that I hit coming here. There's congestion everywhere on the table. The table's small. There's a lot of balls, and you really have to figure out how to maneuver through the rack. And if you don't think, I mean, how are you going to play? I mean, how are you going to play good pool on a situation like that? 9-ball, you can get away with it because there's not a lot of balls, and it's a more generalized cue ball type game. But anything where there's some thought put into it, I mean, you have to think. You have to know how to think, I think, you know, to minimize bad things that can happen, I think, you know. I'd like to thank Predator for helping me out and sponsoring me and giving me equipment to use and stuff like that. They really help the players out, I think, you know. There's not a lot of companies willing to do anything for you, you know. But Predator's been good to me and good to a lot of players, and I'd like to thank them for their support, you know. Thanks to my friends and family, too, for everybody's support, and anybody who's helped me in the past that I might forget, and my backer, Tommy Torres, and my girlfriend for putting up with my crazy routines and my tournaments I'm always away at, and she's been very supportive, you know, really supportive, and just want to tell her I love her. Thank you.